there's crack pipes and drugs being given. The government is not giving away free drugs. It's not going to happen. So that model is the harm reduction model. And with the opioid epidemic, the conversation about like injection sites, I don't know if you've heard that terminology, but it's safe places where people who use intravenous drugs can go with a professional there, use their drugs so they can prevent overdose, right? Tons and tons of people are dying because of all of this. So if we can kind of save lives, we can kind of change lives. So my third point, today really is to use, to not use, to make changes is all an individual choice. It's all for what you do and how you care for yourself and maybe the people around you. And hopefully this conversation kind of sparks, some of that. And hopefully, makes an impact. So stages of change are something that we all go through, and sometimes we don't actually think that we go through it because sometimes we just kind of wake up and make a change right away. It might be something simple like you want to cut out soda. You're like, well, I want to cut out, I'm drinking way too much, and I made that decision, right away. But in actuality, when we look about any kind of change that you made, how you dress, how you do your hair, how you talk, walk, eat, sleep, all that kind of stuff, there's a school of thought that's called stages of change. And we go through this physical and mental journey from point A to point B, where change might kind of take into effect. So I want to just kind of go through them, really quickly, just so that you understand that. And again, really reflect on what change that you've made up until this point of anything, not just substance use. Anything in your life that's kind of come through, you're like, oh wow, I actually went through that journey physically and emotionally, and now I'm in a better place with whatever that thing is. So the first stage is contemplation, which is just the idea that something could be different. I don't want to change, I don't think change is possible, I don't think it benefits me, but I'm living my life one way and maybe something else can change. That's it. Point number two is, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Pre-contemplation. So pre-contemplation is just on the very, very surface that change might be there. Contemplation is the next stage where you try to kind of think about it a little more seriously. You try to maybe daydream about it. You try to kind of like, okay, what would it look like? And I'll use the example of soda. Like what would it look like if I cut down 8 ounces, 12 ounces, a bottle of soda a day? What would that look like to me? Really important next step is preparation. Is what steps are you taking? What steps have you taken to make that change possible? And again, change has not happened yet. You're still thinking about it. You're still saying, well, if I'm going to cut out soda, that means that I got to replace it with something else. What do I want to replace it with? Seltzer water, or water, lemon water, whatever the case. My field, substance use, and I talk about this to college students all the time. The real important step is the fourth step, which is action, right? Nothing happens without action. So once all those stages have kind of gone through, and again, you might not spend too much time on pre-contemplation or contemplation. It might be a day, it might be a few hours, but action is when things are in motion. Okay, on this date, I'm going to cut out soda, all right? And I'm going to put all of my eggs in that basket. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to see what I can achieve. The fifth step, maintenance, right? It means that when change behavior is instilled, when you have it and you don't really, I don't want to say you don't think twice about it, but you go through the motion of, this is now my life. I need to live this life every single day. And so I got to make sure that action is in place every single day. And in our field of substance use and addiction and recovery and treatment, we always talk about relapse. And relapse in this diagram is kind of, a little bit of a falsehood. It doesn't come at the end of maintenance. It actually can happen at any point during any stage. And relapse only means I take one step back to a previous behavior. So if you're in contemplation and you're thinking about change, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then you take a step back emotionally and physically, that's what relapse means. And again, with substance use, relapse could mean, well, I'm going to, smoke 1 joint this week. And then also you smoke 2, that's a relapse. It's going back to a previous behavior that you're trying to make a change in. So relapse can happen at any point. For me, therapeutically, relapse is a learning opportunity. You can learn from what mistakes happened. And when mistakes happen in my life, in our lives, we can kind of look back and learn and hopefully grow from that and say, well, what can I do differently? legal weed, huge news in New Jersey. You know, it was voted by the citizens. You know, the governor tried to kind of push it through, legally on its own. It didn't happen that way. It got to a vote about a year or so ago. And the news now is that the legal weed dispensaries are up and they're functioning for people who are 21 and older. So I just have a little bit of a timeline about it. Again, 21 and plus, just like alcohol. We're really thinking about the parallel of alcohol. And that's where, the weed industry is really predicating a lot of their laws and rules on, is what are you doing for alcohol? And I want to do the same thing with weed. So I want to just put some information out there about the way that they police alcohol is the same way that they police, legal weed, okay? Which is, you have to be 21 and over. You can't, smoke and drive. There's no legal consequences with that. And it's only for personal use. So if you're, buy a bunch of it at the, dispensary, and then you go and start selling it all over the place, that's still illegal, right? And because it's so new in New Jersey, they're trying to learn from other states that have been doing this for quite a while. The laws are going to change. So if you decide to, you're at that point of, 21, you want to go and buy, really make sure you understand that the laws are going to change every, month to month, year to year with this, because New Jersey doesn't know. I talked to our own police force, Rutgers University Police Department, not too long ago. They're confused. Flat out, they're confused. What they say to me is, if we smell weed, if someone has it on their person, we're not going to stop anybody. We're not going to intervene on that. The only way they'll intervene on campus is that if someone, let's say, is under the influence of anything, and they're interfering with the daily process of the university, that's when the police will intervene. But in terms of like seizures and all those kinds of things, that's a different ballgame. The one thing that I will just inform you all, and hope if you decide to come to Rutgers Newark or any kind of college institution about the legalization of cannabis on college campuses, it's very, very different. The reason being is that college institutions receive federal dollars, and cannabis is still a federal crime for purchase. So universities can't allow cannabis to be used recreationally on campus, or they lose federal dollars, which means they lose grants, they lose scholarships, they lose all that kind of stuff. Rutgers is a nonprofit public institution, so they're not going to lose that. If you've been paying attention to politics lately,